So our presentation today is all about visual scripting in Unity. And we're going to actually get in there and actually start making a game today together using visual scripting. Now, visual scripting is pretty cool because it lets us make games without have to actually write code. We can actually just use our mouse and drag and drop things and add logic to our games without actually coding something. So I know a lot of you are here to study coding. Some of you said you're studying that at school. If you know how to code, that's great. This is an alternative to it as well. So who am I and why am I here? My name is Ben McElmoyle, and I'm a developer advocate at Unity. Really, that means I get to spend a lot of time going around to present like this. Most of the time, it's with universities. Sometimes it's at the big trade shows like PAX, GDC, E3, things like that. We get to actually go to those events and present when we're not in a pandemic. In the past, I've worked on games for the Nintendo Switch. I've worked on games for VR and AR headsets. I've been an indie developer. I make my own games on the side. I still love to do that. I was a part-time professor as well, and I've been using Unity for about 8 or so years at this point. So before we get into what is Unity and how is all that, a thing I want you to know is Unity is a technology that game developers use to actually make their games, and we have a lot of games that are made in it. And I want to start off today with showing a little video, and hopefully you recognize some of these games. And if you play any of these games or you've heard about them, let me know in the chat. I want you to shout that out and be like, oh, I've played this one, or I think that game's really cool. So let's see what games you know. So I saw a lot of you giving great answers there. And I want to know, do any of you know any other games or what is your favorite game that was made with Unity? So I know some of you probably, it's hard to tell sometimes if a game is made in it or not. Sometimes at the very beginning, when you actually go to play a game, a little logo will come up and it says made with Unity. So I want to know if any of them, which ones you know. I see lots of people giving great answers here. A lot of those are my favorite as well. Goose Game, the Untitled Goose Game, all kinds of great games. Awesome. So keep them coming. I want to share a few of my favorite games with you guys. I saw a few people mention this already. One of my favorite games recently is Fall Guys. So if you've ever played Fall Guys before, that game's actually made in the Unity engine. It's a great fun game. Came out last summer. I'm sure a lot of you have played it. And that was made using our technology. Another one I want to share with you is really hot right now. I'm sure a lot of you have probably played this. And of course, it is Among Us. So let me know in the chat there if any of you have played Among Us, if you like this game. That game as well was also made in Unity. So there's plenty of games out there these days, all using our technology. Sometimes, it's easy to see if it's made in Unity because it says right at the beginning. Sometimes it doesn't, but plenty of games are out there that use our engine. And in fact, right now, we actually support over 20 different platforms. So that means things like the Nintendo Switch, of course, your Xbox, your PlayStation. If you make a game in Unity, you can bring that to those consoles. You could also, or we also support mobile devices like your Android phone or your Apple phone, as well as your computer, obviously, your web browser, and then even some more interesting devices like the Microsoft HoloLens, the headset, or something like like a VR headset, like an Oculus Quest or an Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive. All of those platforms, we support them. So if you want to make a game for any of those, Unity is a great place to do it. I like to say if it has a screen and you can program it, there's a pretty good chance that we support it and you can make a game using Unity. And right now, if you go on either your Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and you look at any of the top 1,000 mobile games, about 53%, so just over half of those games, are actually made using Unity. So a lot of people are using Unity. And this is my first question, or I guess second question of the day. I want you guys to give a guess. How many creators are using Unity each month? There's no right or wrong answer here. I just want to see what everyone's thinking, and I'll give you the answer in just a second. I see lots all over the map. Got lots of people. I saw someone say 1 million. I think that's actually the closest one so far. I'll give you a hint on that. All right, the chat's going nuts. So here's the grand reveal. Our latest stats, there's actually about 1.5 million developers or creators are using Unity each month. So a lot of people, tons of people out there. These include people like us who want to make video games. It includes people in like film and television are using it. Car manufacturers are using it for marketing. It goes well beyond just video games. So about 1.5 million people are using it every month. So a lot of them. The next question I want to ask you guys: how many Unity apps are downloaded each month? So when we download our games, maybe a game on our phone or our favorite gaming console or PC, whatever it is, how many games do you think are downloaded? Not just games, I should say apps, because they're not all just games. How many are downloaded each month? Lots. I like that answer, lots, and it is lots. I'll give you that much. I see millions. I see thousands. It's a lot more than thousands. It's a lot more than millions as well. I'll give you that. The actual answer is about 3 billion, and that is billion with a B, which seems like a crazy amount of games. But again, when you think about it, on your phone, you probably have, a handful, dozens, maybe even, of games made with Unity. Across your consoles, you have lots of games, and then there's all kind of applications that you don't even know are using Unity in the background. So 3 billion apps per month are downloaded that use the Unity engine. So a lot of games and applications as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what the uses of Unity actually are. Obviously, we've been talking about video games, and we know they make a lot of cool games, and a lot of great games are out there, and we know that. I talked a little bit about XR and VR, so actually putting on the headsets and being able to either play a game or an experience there. And then there's some other interesting use cases. One is simulation. So maybe some of us are into cars. We have like autonomous vehicles now, or we're getting into that, cars that can drive themselves. And they actually do this with the help of a lot of computer systems. And before they just go and put a car on the road and just hope it can drive itself, they actually need to test and simulate that in virtual environments. And they're actually using Unity to do that. They're actually training using machine learning the brain of the car in a virtual space before they bring it to the real world. And I think that's a pretty interesting use case. A few other ones here. Like I mentioned, it's being used pretty heavily now in film animation and cinematics. That screenshot you see there is of the Lion King, sorry, from 2019. They didn't use Unity to render out the final movie, so that when you actually sit down in the movie theater and you watch it, that wasn't rendered with Unity, so it's not actually drawn with Unity, but they actually used Unity as a tool where they had a cameraman in virtual world running around with a real life camera in his hands, but then had a video screen on, like a TV monitor. And he could see what was happening in the game engine. So he'd be able to walk around the virtual space with his real camera, but then it projects into the virtual world and he can see those fake lions on his screen. So you can do lots of cool things like that besides just gaming. And you can record that data and then actually use that when you render out your final movie. And also, like I mentioned, the auto industry, so car manufacturers, they're using Unity a lot these days. They're using it a lot, primarily for marketing, actually. So these companies they like to have websites where you can go and see what their latest car models are. Maybe you can figure out what your favorite rims are, or what color of the car you like, or the trim package. And you can actually do that and use Unity as your rendering pipeline. So Unity is what's actually drawing the car to the screen, and then they can configure it to show everyone all their cool cars and vehicles out there. And the last one I want to talk about that's not in gaming is architecture and engineering. So construction sites, essentially. And what they're doing these days is the architects and the designers of buildings are making their 3D models in their software, their CAD software, as we call it. So they have a plan of this is the building we want to make. And then your engineers and your construction workers go and they look at that plan and they actually make the building. But what we can do now with the use of XR, so extended reality and augmented reality, is what you see that guy doing there in the picture. He's holding up an iPad or a tablet, and he can actually see the building by looking up and seeing it on the screen, even though it's not there yet. It's kind of like the plans of what it's going to look like, and you can see it over different stages of development. So a lot of cool uses of Unity that aren't just video games. Obviously, video games is something I love. It's what we still love. We get a lot of game developers, but we've seen a lot of other industries using it as well. So let's talk about some of the common jobs we see in the gaming industry. And then we'll get into the actual visual scripting part and how some of these career paths use it. So the first one I want to talk about is as a programmer. And this isn't just someone at Unity in specific. This is more for a game programmer in general. So as a programmer, as you probably expect, I know many of you are here learning programming and computer science. Your main job is to actually write code. So you're the person that's actually going and creating the systems and the logic and doing all that technical work behind the scenes that makes the games fun, and playable at the end of the day. So everything from actually drawing things to the screen to handling input off of controller, your networking code, everything has to be coded at sub level. So there's a whole bunch of different style of programmers or types of programmers out there, but I want to just call them programmer for right now. And typically speaking, we see a few different ways you can go with any of these career paths. If you go to what we call an indie studio or a really small studio, maybe just a few people working there, maybe even just two or three, sometimes one developer, you have to be a lot more versatile, or you have to have a lot broader skill set to be able to do that job. When you go up to what we call AAA games, or those big budget games, games like Call of Duty or Fortnite or Mario, any of those really big, high budget games that we all know and love, and they tend to take these career paths or these jobs and get very specific with them. So your job might not be just a programmer, you might be a lighting programmer. And your job is just to sit and figure out lighting calculations that will help the game look better or produce better shadows, things like that. So I think that's a good thing to call out, that if you want to work with smaller teams and on smaller indie games, smaller projects, you typically have to have a wider skill set. And then if you want to work on those big, expensive AAA, big budget games, you typically get more narrow and focused as you go. So programmers exist whether you're using Unity or not. And then in the past, if you were making a game in Unity, you were programming with a language called C sharp. That's our go-to language. It's not just a video game language. You can use it for a lot of cool things. You can use it on the web or just for any other given programming task. But it's what we used traditionally in our engine. And that's great. But then what happens when you talk about some of these other career paths? So let's talk about the artists next. Video game artists, obviously, just as important as programmers. They, depending again on the studio you work in and the exact job you have, you may or may not be a technical artist or just kind of a general artist. And then again, there's a whole wide spectrum of different disciplines and different paths you can go down. But I want to talk about it at the high level. Let's say you're wanting to make the next Mario game, and your boss comes to you and he says, "We need a new model of Mario, and we need a toadstool, and we need a tree, and whatever else you might need." A lot of people in the past, they create that art in a separate application outside of Unity, maybe something like Blender or Maya, 3ds Max. There's a whole bunch of different software that you can use for that. And traditionally, they bring them into Unity. And then this is where the issue kind of comes in, that they're not programmers. Maybe they don't understand C sharp or how to write code. And that's perfectly fair. They've never really had to. That's not usually part of the job description. There are technical artists, but that's not everyone. But they might still want to make games. They might not want to have to wait for a programmer, or maybe they want to test something and they don't say, "Oh, I have my new character model done, but I have to wait for the computer programmer to actually implement him running or jumping or doing whatever it is he does." So we still want artists and other people besides programmers to be able to actually code and actually make something happen on screen. And that's a really good use case for visual scripting. And we'll get into it in just a minute. The last one I want to talk about is a designer. And this one I think is a really interesting role, and it changes pretty heavily depending on your studio. But this is the person who actually sits down and tries to figure out what makes the game fun. Why are players going to want to play this game? What are the mechanics of our game? What are the actions our players can take? What's the reward system? If you do a quest or you complete a mission, how much money should we give this player? The economy in the game, so how much items cost. All these things usually come from a designer. Now, designers aren't technical people. Again, they don't program. Some do, but oftentimes they don't. They often don't make any assets you actually see or any art you actually see in the game itself. They're the ones trying to figure out how to balance everything in the background. And again, traditionally they don't know how to program, so when it comes to actually trying to make tweaks or something else, they're often left waiting for the programmer to actually go in and change the code to do something. And this is great, but it kind of causes bottlenecks and it slows down the production of your game. So if you're trying to make a game and you need to get it out by a certain release date, slowdowns are bad. We don't want that, right? So we want everyone to be able to have some access to coding. And we don't want everyone to have to learn to be a full programmer, because it's just not going to happen. Not everyone wants to do that. So here at Unity, we have this saying that we believe the world is a better place with more creators in it. And we believe that's true, whether you're in the video game industry or movies or music or anybody that's out there using Unity for any use case. We think that's a good thing, and we want to see more of those people out there. But we realized programming has been something that's been holding us back for a while. So we want to introduce something called Bolt Visual Scripting. This is what we're going to talk about today, the main subject. And it's really kind of a system that lets you add logic and actually do things you would traditionally do by programming C sharp without having to actually write any code at all. So it's a really great tool for this. It's completely free if you're a Unity user. So I know we had lots of people just signing up. If you've never used Unity before, totally okay. Don't worry about that. Um, but it is free for everyone out there. I saw a question earlier on about, is Unity free? And the answer in the short term is yes. If you're making less than 100,000 in revenue every year from a game related project, then you can use Unity free. You can make your games, your apps, whatever, release them. You don't have to pay any royalties or anything like that. We do have paid subscriptions for our professional users and people working in like big game studios, things like that. But for you just getting started today, absolutely free, which is great news. And so is visual scripting as well. So you can, like I said, create your logic for your games without having to write any code, which is always great. We're going to do that, and we'll actually see how it works in a second. But it's a node-based graph system. So if that sounds a little scary, don't worry about it. We'll see what it is in a second, and I think you'll see what it means. Really, you'll see what it means soon. Really, it's just connecting the dots essentially. And the nice thing about visual scripting is that it includes APIs or ways for our programmers and non-programmers to work together. So we can create custom things. Even if I am a programmer, which I am by trade, I can still work with my artist and vice versa by using a tool like this. So let's see what this actually looks like. So here on our screen on the right side, we have a key. It's a key in the game. It opens the big boss door, something like that. Maybe we want it to rotate on screen. We want it to spin around in place so the player notices it for whatever reason. So here in our game, we have our update node, we have a rotate node, and then we have just a float value, just a variable number. And just by dragging and dropping those lines there in between, we can have something like the key starting rotating, and we don't have to write any code. Now, I think this is important to realize here that just because you don't have to write code doesn't mean you don't have to understand programming logic or things like flow, things like math, all the kind of base level things you'd expect a programmer to know. You still have to have at least some basic understanding of this, but it reduces the layer of actually writing that physical code. So a quick comparison between the two. These two these two elements here do exactly the same thing. The code and the graph we see below will do the same thing in our game. And I know a lot of us are just beginners at programming. So if you see this, you're like, what does this do? Don't worry about it. What it does here is it looks for every game object, which is our base unit in Unity, with the name player. So it's looking for every player in our game. After that, it's just a for loop. So it's going to loop over every player we find. And it just does a debug.log. So it prints out a little bit of information about the player. That's it. Pretty simple. And this graph we see down here at the bottom, it does the exact same thing. It's just in graph form. So you can get the job done either way. Your players or your users of your game at the end of the day, they won't know which way you did. It'll feel exactly the same, just two different options again. So, what are our use cases of both that we see? Rapid prototyping. So, this is a great skill to learn. It's something you should know about if you want to become a game developer. Any game out there, no matter any game you've ever played or you've ever seen, starts out as a prototype. That means a really simplified, basic version of that game that the developers make to see if it's fun, to see how it feels, to make sure it's worth spending the time and money to make the full blown game on. So if you are trying to come up with that for yourself, you're trying to figure out if the game idea you have is fun, or maybe you're trying to say, hey, I want to get this game out to a publisher. I want them to give me money so I can, get a team and go out there and actually sell my game. They're going to want to see a prototype first. So to get that done really quickly before you have to hire a whole army of programmers or anything, Bolt is a great use case to help get that prototype off the ground and get it going. It's also really good for actually learning how to write C sharp. And we'll talk about that when we get in there in just a minute. But one of the things I like is that it removes the actual needing to understand the syntax or how to actually sit and type out the coding, but you still maintain the logic and the flow and how math works, things like that. You start picking up those soft skills besides just the actual sitting down and typing on your keyboard to write code. It makes regular scripts accessible to non-programmers. So this is really important if you're out there working in a team and you're trying to make a big video game. You're going to have artists and designers and QA, quality assurance testers. You're going to have producers, project managers, all kinds of different people with different skill sets working together to try to make this one game. And when that happens, things can get a little heated sometimes. It makes it harder because, as a programmer, we might be able to read code, but the artist has no idea what's going on. And using something like a mediator, like visual scripting, to kind of sit in the middle and make everyone's life and everyone's understanding of each other a little bit easier is a really good thing. So it really helps out there as well. And then you can actually use it to make templates and tools that you can share with other Unity users. So let's say you and a buddy are both trying to make a game. You came up with this really cool new mechanic last night and you want to share it. You can send him your visual scripts and your graphs the same way that you would send code or anything else. And they can load it up or add it to their project or whatever it is they need to do to get the job done. And finally, it's currently shipping with Unity 2018 and above. So it actually does go back a few years. And I will note here before we get into it that right now we're calling it Bolt Visual Scripting. And when you download it from the asset store, it's called Bolt Visual Scripting. But actually going forward in the next versions of Unity, when they come out, Bolt is going to be included directly in the editor. So you're not going to have to do a bunch of the extra downloading steps we'll have to do today. And you'll be able to just access it directly. And it's not going to be called Bolt anymore. It is just be called Visual Scripting. We're going to drop the Bolt name from it and just call it Visual Scripting in the future. So a little sneak preview for you guys there. So how do we actually get this? I don't want to spend too long here. We're going to get it from the asset store. We did ask that you had Unity installed if you want to follow along. If you didn't get to it or something went wrong, again, don't sweat it. It's totally okay. You can just follow along with what I'm doing. You can always rewatch the recording. And then at the end of this session as well, I'll give out some videos that will go even further if you want to learn a little bit more. So let's get into a live demo here. I'm going to stop my screen share for just a moment so I can open up Unity. Right, let me start the screen sharing again. And please let me know if you can read this. It's a little hard to see sometimes on a Zoom call, but we'll let you know. So hopefully, if you're able to follow those instructions yesterday or last night, today, whenever it was for you, you were able to download Unity Hub at the very least, which is this window you see up here. Yours is going to look different than this. I have a whole bunch of different projects from different stuff, and you're not going to have any of these just yet. So if this is just empty for you, that's totally okay. Now I'm going to try to answer a question here. I saw some people say, "How do I or invalid license, something like that? How do I go farther?" Up here in the top right corner right now you see a BM, that's my initials, but if you haven't signed in yet you will have to do that. So you might see a little like a default avatar, like the silhouette of a human, the little icon we see a lot on social media. If you click on that you'll be able to sign in and go from there. So you should have created a Unity account on the Unity website. If you sign in, that should get you past the invalid license issue for the most part. But I don't want to spend too long here because I actually want to get into it and get going. So let's create our first new project here tonight. So I'm here under the projects window, and I'm going to go over to the right and select new. Now, I did ask you to install Unity 2019.4 with this. So Unity Hub is kind of like Steam would be on your PC, let's say, where you could have a whole bunch of different games installed, but Steam kind of works as the mediator to you go to Steam first, you look at all the different games you have, and you select one and open it. Same thing here with Unity. There's a lot of different versions of Unity. Developers use different versions for different reasons. So this is one nice spot that you can go to find all the different versions of Unity you have installed, as well as all the different projects you might be working on. So for me, I'm going to go new, and I'm going to select 2019.4. Now you might be saying, why are we using an older version? It's 2021 at this point. Currently, 2019.4 is our long-term support version. So it means it's been out for a little while. It's been out for almost 2 years or a year and a half at this point. And we're continuing to support it. If there are bugs, we'll continue to support it for 2 years. So it's a good stable version to use is what we're getting to. So let's do 2019.4. If that's the only one you have, you might not see any of those other options. That's totally cool as well. Next here, we're going to select our template. So you see a whole bunch of different ones here, and feel free to download and try any of these as you want. We're going to start with a 3D project here tonight, and I'm going to call this I don't know, let's call it visual scripting demo. It doesn't matter really what you call it. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. Now, this is going to take a few minutes to spin up. The first time you create a project, it usually takes a minute or two. This will largely depend on how fast your computer is. But after you do this for the first time, it'll be a lot faster every time after you do it. Just the first time, it has to create a bunch of things in the background. Now, I see there's a few questions as this loads. I will try to get to some of them. Got a whole bunch of people here talking to us. So I apologize if I miss anybody's question here. Let's see. People saying it's not working. You need a license. Yeah, there's going to be a lot. I'm not going to be able to answer all of these here live. We don't have that much longer. If you're getting that, I need a license. My guess is you probably haven't signed up correctly on the website. Make sure you have that. Make sure you have your account first and that you've signed in. And then when you try to create this new one, you should already be activated under that free license. And it should just open for you. We'll see if we can troubleshoot any of these at the end. But until then, I will continue for now.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. So some people emailed about the license cannot be activated before the class. And what happened is, first of all, you do need to do an account and log in. And then on the top right, there is this gear thing. You just click on the gear thing and then go to click on the installation manager and then says activate your license. You've never had license, like you never had Unity before, and then most likely that activate your license thing. It's gray. So you just click on it and then select this is for personal use, and then it's actually going to give you a license. So it's free, as Ben said earlier, for pretty much everyone here. So once you've done that, your license issue is going to be resolved.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hopefully that helps some people out. So this that you're seeing now here on screen, this is a Unity itself. So this is the editor, as we call it, the Unity editor. And this is where we actually go and create our 3D worlds and create our games, and we actually test and write code and a whole bunch of cool stuff. Now, someone had the question about the zip file or the file that came with it. You should have seen that at the end of the instructions. It was the Unit 1 starting package. When you have Unity opened up, like I do now, if I just double click on this, this really is a whole it's a package full of different assets, as we call them, for our game. So it's models. These .fbx files are actually 3D models, so what we see, like our characters and stuff in our game, materials, a whole bunch of different stuff. What exactly it is isn't super important. What we'll do though is hit the import button, and what that's going to do is bring all those assets, as we call them, into our game here. And this is going to give us our starting point for today. And we're going to keep it really simple. We're not going to go too in depth. I know for many of you, this is the first time you've ever seen Unity. And I totally get if you see this and you're like, wow, that's a lot of buttons. This is a professional level tool. Obviously, you can do a whole lot of cool things with it. It's a very powerful tool and engine. So it does have a learning curve behind it. So if you see it for the first time, you're like, oh, wow, this is a lot. What do I start with? Don't worry. Everyone feels that way when they first get started. So what I'm going to do is go down here into the project window, the project panel. And I'm going to go under my assets and scenes. And one of the things I just brought in with that package was my prototype 1 scene. So I'm going to click that. It's going to load up for just a second. And this scene here actually comes from a free online course that we have called Create with Code. You can find that, and I can give you the link after if you want to learn more about Unity. And all it does right now, if I hit the play button, I have this little pickup truck. I can drive it down the road, and that's pretty much it. Very simple game. There's no real objectives just yet. We actually add some physics and some objectives in that course. But for tonight or for today, depending where you are, let's just start here and see if we can add some visual scripting to this. So this little game, as we call it, I know it's not the most exciting project ever, has two traditional C# scripts in it right now. And I'm going to show those to you really quick. One of them exists on our main camera. So I'm going to go up into my hierarchy, which is this window over here. I'm going to click on my main camera, and I'm going to go to my follow player script. So I see down here on my right, under my inspector panel, is the follow player. I can double click that, and it's actually going to open up Visual Studio. This should have been installed with Unity when you did that. If not, again, don't worry. Sometimes if you have other coding software, things go a little bit weird. Doesn't really matter for tonight. I just wanted to show you this. So this code that you see here on the screen right now, this is C# code. It's just one simple class, and all it does is get the camera to follow the pickup truck, so the player right now. So it's a pretty a simple script. If you haven't seen code before, you're like, what is this? Let me try to explain a little bit of what's happening for you. So first thing here, we have this late update function call. So an update is called, think about video games kind of like a flip book or a traditional animation, where you draw out a bunch of smaller pictures together. And if you flip through them really fast, it looks like it's animating, or you're getting things happening on your screen. Video games are a lot like that. And every update call we do is like one of those images being flipped to on our screen. So what we're doing in this on any given frame or any given update call is taking the transform position, so the actual position of the camera, and we're setting it equal to the position of our player, which is this bit here. So we say move the camera right to where the player is, and then we add an offset. So the offset is really just move it to the position of the player, and then as the offset's defined up here, we move it 0 units on the X. And this is a bit of advanced math. So if you don't understand this, don't worry. I don't want anyone to freak out and think they can never be a game developer. These are skills you learn as you go. But what we're going to say is take the camera, put it to the player's position, and then we move it 0 on the X-axis. So that goes across the screen, left to right. So we want it to be right in the middle of the player. Move it up 5 units. So now we're at the player and we're going 5 units above it. And then back 10 units. So think about it. We have our player, which is our pickup truck. We want the camera to go right to it. Then we bring it up and we bring it back. So that puts our camera kind of behind the player. And as the player moves around, the camera goes with it. So it's a pretty simple script. This is about as simple as scripts get in any video game, in all honesty. And I want to see if I can reproduce this in visual scripting. I don't want to have to come in here and write code and understand what this does. I just want to write a visual script to see what I can do. So let's drag this to
Yeah.
the side for a second. Yep,
So then I'm going to interrupt you.
sure.
Can you start from like sort of the beginning part and just kind of show it slowly again, because people are like kind of lost in various places. I don't think you need to explain the scripting part again, but just like how do people once they start a project, what's the next thing they do? I
Sure.
think people are a little lost on various places. Some of them couldn't find the assets, some of them couldn't find various other things.
Sure. So let's see. So I see some questions. If you don't have Unity installed at this point, you're probably not going to be able to get it installed to follow along. So don't worry too much. You can always grab it after and rewatch the video. But let's assume people got to the point of a brand new project. It's just opened. And let's go back here. It'll probably look something like this for you guys. So if you are at this point, you've got the project going and installed, and I'll kind of end it here. If you or begin it here. If you haven't been able to get to this point yet, realistically, just looking at our time, we don't have much time to go further back than this. So hopefully you're able to get here. And if not, we'll make sure the videos are available to you after. But if you did get to this point, and you want to bring those files in, so as part of the instructions yesterday, there was a zip file, or actually looks like a .unity package file. When you have Unity open and you just see this kind of starting default template, double click on this, and it's going to input, or it's going to bring up this importer window for you. Now, because I just did it and I brought all those packages or all those files in to Unity already, it's going to tell me there's nothing to import. But assuming you have not done that already, then you can just hit import down at the bottom, and it'll suck all those files in and get them set up for you. So hopefully we got to this far. If you have, and you're seeing, or if you're seeing nothing to import, then the files are already there for you. So hopefully we're able to get to that point. At that section, you're going to still see this just kind of blue skyline in the background. What you'll want to do is come down towards the bottom of the screen here. Make sure you click on the project panel there. Go down to your scenes, and then you'll see two of them. So the one we're currently on right now is the sample scene. This is kind of the default, what every game, what every project starts with is this scene. The one you see beside it there, prototype one, that's what we want to open to get that pickup truck again. So all you have to do to open that is just double click it. So 2 clicks, and then you should see this scene that that we are just playing in. So there we go. I see someone said that they tried to click on the zip file, but it wasn't importing into Unity. If that is the case, let's see if we can help you out here. Sorry, here it is. Under assets at the top. So I'm in Unity. I'm near the very top here. I'm going under assets, and then you can import a package, custom package, and then you'll have to browse your computer to wherever you downloaded that zip or that Unity package to. So for me, it's under my downloads. I can click it. I'll hit open, and it'll bring me back to this window. And again, I'm only seeing nothing to import because I've brought those files in already. But if you haven't, you should see that list of all the files, and you can hit OK. So this should bring you to this scene we have here, which is our pickup truck driving down the road. And if you want to make sure it's working, you can hit play. And then all I'm using is my WASD keys or my arrow keys. And I can just drive and turn a little bit and drive down the road. So if you're seeing this part, you're where you need to be. If you're not, if you haven't got here for any reason, again, don't sweat it too much. It's totally okay. I see someone said, how do we create our own assets? We're going to just create a visual script tonight, but you can go and actually create any code you want. You could, if we had the time, we could go and create a 3D model like this, like a car, a player, animations. You can bring anything you want to bring and create into Unity, but just in the sake of time, because we don't have very long tonight, we're using this as our starting package. So again, back to this. Let's see what's going on. So if you see the pickup truck and you see the mountains and stuff in the background, I want you to come over to the hierarchy, which is this little tab here on the left side of the screen. And I want you to click on the vehicle. So if you're seeing nothing over here on the right, once you click the vehicle, you should get a whole bunch of different properties that pop up. Minimize some of those. So you don't have to minimize these. I'm just going to do that so it's less to look at. The one I really care about and the one we just looked at was the player controller. So this was the actual script we went into and downloaded. Or yeah, it's part of what came in with the download, but what I just opened as well. So if I double click on that word player controller, that's how I was able to get into. So it opened on another monitor. That's how I was able to get into this view here, and I was actually able to actually read this bit of code. So definitely, a lot coming at you quick. Like I said, it is a full suite of software that's used by professionals. So, it's going to take some practice to get used to and to get good at. And I will make sure you have a video as well at the end, or not just a video, but a link to some assets that if this is overwhelming or going too fast, you can also follow along with them and learn how to start making your own games in Unity by following that as well. So let's continue from here. Let's try to convert this script here to visual scripting. Let's go away from programming and get into visual scripting. So I'm going to drag it to the side. And like I said, in future versions of Unity, visual scripting is going to come installed. You won't have to add anything else. You won't have to bring it into the package. But because we're using an older version right now, we still have to bring it in. So to bring it in, I'm going to go under Window. I'm going to go to my asset store. So Unity actually has what we call the asset store. It's a website essentially that you can go into and actually find all kinds of different assets. Now, when we say assets, it can be 3D models, it could be code, it could be music, it can be a whole bunch of different things we use in our game. And actually Bolt is under there right now. Now, looks like my internet wants to be slow here tonight. There we go. So you'll see I'm under my assets store now. And if you want to take a look around here at any point, definitely feel free. You'll see all kinds of different cool things, 3D models, video players, anything you could imagine. There's lots of cool stuff here. Now, some of it is paid, so don't go and just start spending money if you're not allowed to. But we're going to look up Bolt visual scripting. Oops. And when we do this, we should find the package we need to bring in. I'm going to search for that. I'll scroll down here. Now mine's a little bit like grayed out or washed out because I've downloaded it in the past, but you're going to want to look for this Bolt visual scripting one. Click on that. And then you can just hit import. So this is going to grab everything you need from the website, and you'll be able to go and download visual scripting or Bolt here. Actually, I should add one step because I am signed in as well, but because I know many of you are just getting started, you won't be. When you go to the asset store, again, you'll probably see the little like human or the little picture here. You'll have to go in and sign into your account once again. And then once you've signed in, you should be okay. If you're a new user, you will probably have to do that your first time. If you've been using Unity in the past, you may already be signed in. So let's go ahead and hit import. Again, it's going to show me these files, just like we brought in the initial scene, the pickup truck and stuff. I'm going to hit import. And it'll just take a second, and it's going to grab a bunch of files and bring them in for us. So nothing's going to change too much. It looks exactly the same, but we actually have the package ready to go and ready to start using. So I'm going to go to my scene, and what I'll do is go up under my tools tab here at the top. I'm going to go to install Bolt. So we're actually able to bring the package down. And when I do this here, it's going to unzip that package and it's going to get everything set up in the background for us. So it's just kind of automate some steps so we don't have to manually put a bunch of files in place. And again, this will be simplified a lot in the future. You won't have to go through quite as many steps. It'll just be there. But for today, we still have to do it. So I hit import once again, and it starts loading here in the background. And then once this is complete, we'll almost be ready to go. We just have a few quick little options, and then we'll be on our way to actually making our first graph. So here we go. Welcome to Bolt Visual Scripting. I'll just hit next. You can have two different naming schemes. If we're just getting started as programmers, which many of us are, let's go ahead and select human naming. The assembly options, unless you know you want or you don't want one, I would just suggest going to the very bottom and hitting next. No need to worry about that. Same thing here with type options. Unless you're a more advanced programmer and you know what you're doing, you don't need to change any of these. So just go to the bottom and hit generate. Now this will just take, again, a second, and then this is the last step. Once this is good to go, visual scripting is ready to go, and we'll create our first graph. And I think we're only going to get the chance to go to one tonight, but hopefully that's enough to kind of show you what it's all about and show you how it works. So visual scripting is becoming more and more popular. A lot of developers are starting to use it now in their games. And like I said, it gives artists really the chance and non-technical people the chance to get in there and actually add some mechanics, some function to your game without having to write that. Someone was just asking, how did I get there? I think this will, oh, no, it's not going to let me open it in the background as this loads. But I went to Tools. So up here at the top of my window, I went to Tools. I hit Install Bolt. And once I did that, it gave me this window. So Bolt's now set up for me. It's ready to go. I'm just going to close this. And I'm going to go back to my main camera object. So in the hierarchy over here on the left, this is where we had our camera following script. I'm actually going to turn this script off because I don't want that code running. And to do that, it's pretty simple. Just unselect that little box. And if I run my game now, you'll see I'm still able to drive the truck, but my camera no longer follows it. So I want to try to reproduce that logic of the camera following in a visual script. So let's try to do this really quick, because we are running short on time. To do this, I'm going to add a component. Components are kind of the core foundation of everything in Unity. Again, I know this is a lot of information for someone just starting, but we wanted to show you this tonight. I'm going to go under Bolt Visual Scripting, and I'm going to add a flow machine, the very top one there. This adds a flow machine component to our game object. And from here, what I can do is hit new. I'm going to create a new flow machine, and I'll just call it follow player. You can name this whatever makes sense for the logic you're trying to add. But for me, we're trying to have our camera follow the player. So let's call it that. And now once we're here, we can hit edit graph, and it's going to open up this graph window for us. So this is the actual core of it. This is visual scripting itself. This is where we can start going in and creating a visual script instead of writing code. So before in our actual code, and we won't spend too much time here, we are taking the position of our camera, setting it equal to the position of the player, and then adding an offset. So let's see if we can do that real quick. So it shouldn't be too hard to do that. Let's go back. There we go. All I'm going to do is click this little triangle from my update and drag it out and click again. So these little nodes we're going to be adding, this is almost like us actually writing code, but without having to write code. So before I was setting the position, so I can use this window, which we call the fuzzy finder, to actually go in and search for what we want. So we know we want to deal with the position. I'm going to go to my transform set position. So these are definitely a little bit more advanced topics. I know we have some of you are just in public school or grade school. Typically, you wouldn't get into this kind of computer science and this in depth to in high school. But if it is something that interests you, definitely, getting started earlier is a great idea. So I have this transform.set position. And without doing anything else, I just want to hit play, which will start my game, and we'll see what we can get already. and you'll see our camera's moved, and it's actually under the truck now. That's not exactly what we want. We want to set it to the position of the truck. So we're here on our vehicle. Oops, sorry, we're here on our main camera. Let's go into the variables. We're going to add a variable here. Oops, sorry, wrong button. We're going to call it player. So this variable is going to represent the actual player, the pickup truck in our game. The type we will set to game object, and the value will actually drag, this is our vehicle here, into that slot, and that's it. So now we have a variable set up that is our vehicle. Now back in our flow graph, we can actually access this variable by right clicking, and I'll just search for the variable we just created, player. And there it says get the player. So there we go. And now what I want to do is get the position from this player. So let's take the node here, drag it out, and I will look up position. And I'll get my position from that. And then again, it's just dragging and dropping. I'll take my little arrow and plug it in there. And what we should have now is on our update function, we should be setting the position of our camera to the position of the player. So it's going to be a little weird looking still, but let's see what it does. So it's definitely under. Those are the wheels of the car. And it looks like it's following it around, but it's kind of underneath of it, which isn't exactly what we had before. So let's do one last step to get it following the vehicle. In our code we had before, we added an offset. That was adding 5 units up above the vehicle and then 10 units back. Let's see if we can do the same thing in our visual script. So we're going to have to create a vector 3, which for many of you, this will be the first time you've probably seen a vector or heard of a vector. Really, it's just 3 different numbers that we have, that x, y, and z value. Those numbers there will line up with what we had in code. We had 0, 5, and -10. And what I want to do is add the position of our player and our offset that we just created. So I'm going to delete this line by right-clicking it. And instead, I'm going to drag one down here and search for add. And actually, it's going to suggest it to me. So I want to add 2 numbers together, 2 vectors together. There we go. And then I'll plug in those newly added numbers to the set position. After that, if I hit play, it's going to load up here for a second. I once again have my vehicle driving down the road and the camera's following it. So it looks like we are running short here on time tonight. So let's stop our visual scripting bit here tonight, and we'll go over to some questions. I know there's lots of different questions about people. I think many of them are Unity technical questions. Let me see if I can answer a few of those by giving you a few links. So I'm going to stop my screen share really quick. Yeah, you can bring those in, and I'll share this one thing just as everyone's typing here. These links here are great. I'll try to put them in the chat. They might get lost because lots of people are looking for them. But these are samples and documentation as well if you want to dive really deep into this stuff. And honestly, the best way to learn this is just go onto YouTube and search up Unity Visual Scripting or Unity Bolt, and you'll find a lot of tutorials there. And we had a really short time tonight, an hour, to essentially download Unity, learn what it is, try to get into it. So we're compressing a lot into a really short time. But if you follow those videos, you'll be able to pause them as you need, watch exactly what they're doing, and take as much time as you need there as well. So hopefully you can slow things down and get more into it that way.
Yeah, if you can share that in the chat, I'll make sure
absolutely.
We'll make sure to include that in the video we send out as well. So I see people are raising your hand. You can type your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And I'm going to unmute people who have questions, and you can ask questions, okay? And then when you ask questions, I think it might actually be better if you ask them like more general questions as opposed to specific installation questions, because those you're probably going to get it from the video. So, Danya, you still have a question?
Yeah, but I have one thing to say. My name is not Danya, it's just that I'm using my mom's account. But
okay,
my question is that so like I want to make my own assists, but I don't know how to do that. So like, I want to make like my own character, my own world, and all that, but I don't know how.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, most people want to make their own things, and to do that, what I would suggest if you're just starting out is maybe looking at another piece of software called Blender. Blender is a 3D modeling software, so it's where you can actually go to create your characters, your worlds, whatever it is you want for your game. It's separate than Unity. It's a different piece of software, but you can create your assets and your models there and then input them into your Unity project. And that's where you add your code and your physics, your music, everything else. So we definitely don't have the time to cover that tonight. And there are other solutions out there as well. Blender is just a really popular one and it's free. And there's a lot of good tutorials on YouTube, which is why I suggest it. But a lot of the different 3D modeling software, pretty much all of them you can use and bring your projects into Unity. So it's a very, if that's what you want to do, that's awesome. That's a whole job in itself, being an artist and creating models. So if that's what interests you, I say definitely go for it and maybe look up Blender on YouTube and see if you can follow some tutorials there.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Would you like to have a question?
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question.
Mhm.
For the part where you like imported the Unity thing, how did you like download the car and stuff? Because I can't find the asset.
Sure. So
I
I'm not sure
downloaded it.
how that was sent out yesterday, but I believe as part of that email at the end, it would have either been attached or included in there somehow. Um,
How do you like
just
put it in the game?
Sure, I can show you that again really quick. So if you have it downloaded, sorry, let me just open this up again.
And another question is, do you make any Roblox games?
I personally don't. I haven't played much of Roblox in myself. That's another great tool, especially if you're just getting started making games. You don't have as much customizability there. You can't go as deep with the games, but to get started, I think that's a great way to do it. So if you're making games in Roblox, that's a good starting spot. And then as you advance yourself and you get more advanced ideas, bigger games you want to make, you can always move over to Unity and make those bigger projects.
Okay. Is there any like can learn Roblox Studio lessons?
I don't personally know. I'm sure there are out there, but I haven't dealt with any of those myself.
So we don't have a Roblox class at this point, although we might be adding one. We are, however, making a Unity class, and we hope to launch that in about 2 months before the summer. So that's going to be super exciting. And a couple of people also asked us about, well, what does a regular class look like? So today is not a regular class. Today, Ben is our very special guest. So he's showing us a lot of really interesting things about game industry, Unity, also this new tool of Unity Bolt. When we do our Unity class, it will be small group classes, like some of you have been there learning Scratch or other things. Typically, we have a teacher and 4 students. If when we run our Unity class, that will be more of the format. What did you learn today that you're going to tell your friend or your parents or someone else saying, I went to this Unity class today? Then I learned this. Someone said I coded. That's great. Someone said how to create 3D video games. That's cool. Someone said I learned about visual code is actually useful in real life. That's a good one to learn. Yeah, a lot of you started coding by doing Scratch coding. Obviously Unity Bolt is a lot more complicated, but still, it's also highly visual. Yeah, someone said, I'm so excited that you can use blocks to code instead of written script. That's very cool. These are all great learnings. Anyone?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to learn. I think seeing you all getting started today, it's great that you're interested and you want to make games. If you're seeing Unity and you're seeing this stuff and you're like, that there's so much to learn, definitely get that. Totally understand. Like I said, if you look up tutorials, we have Create and Learn's creating a tutorial for you guys, or a lesson, I should say, you guys as well. There's lots of resources out there to make games. You just have to be willing to go out and look them up.
Yeah, someone also said I learned how big Unity is and how many people use it. Yeah, you have probably no idea. Like a lot of the games you play actually were created by Unity. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully now you know, like next time you see your friend play Among Us or any of the Call of Duty games, you say, you know what? You know, I know that game was created using Unity. Cool. Well, anyway, so I want to thank everyone for joining, and definitely thank Ben for sharing all this like really exciting things with us. I have not played with both before. I watched videos, and this is first time me doing it also, so that's super exciting. I think I'm going to play more of it. As I mentioned, that we will have a Unity class hopefully in a couple months, and I hope to see many of you there. It's super powerful and really fun to play Unity game, and then make games in Unity also. We do have another event coming up, I think in maybe March 10th or something like that. You can go to our site to look for details. We have someone from Google and the Wemo team actually come talk about self-driving cars and how that whole, what are the different cool technologies available and being used in self-driving cars. With that, Ben, I'd love to thank you again for joining us, and thank everyone for coming, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.